Good evening, everyone. It's February 26th. I've got Linda Morris here. Thank you, Linda. It's February 26th, Monday. Lighting with Success call. I know there's probably some of you who are joining in from that are new. I know there's some expected that are new. I'm always got to get that mute. Got to get that mute. There we go. By the way, just as a rule of thumb, it's always best to be on these calls with an earphone. That way you don't get that loop around that you get usually when somebody's just on listening mode through their laptop, because their laptop has their speaker built in and their speakers that they're listening to. So there's usually a feedback loop which distorts the sound for everybody. So just as a rule of thumb, to up your game and get more pro about your business, I recommend, even though these are really simple ones, these are my iPhone earphones. But if you are going to be doing broadcasting of any kind, I suggest you get the really neat microphone that sounds like I'm a real broadcaster. This is cheap, by the way. This is blue. You can pick this up. My earphones are plugged into this, and I can mute myself like that. You can't hear unmute and whatever. Anyway, this little thing cost me about $100 or something like that, but it's such a great tool for when you're doing video broadcasting. And the reason why I even bothered with this was that when I was first getting some coaching myself on doing live video, I was told by the person who was an expert, actually works at Google, that a lot of people, when they listen to the playback of your recordings, they're not actually watching you. They're checking their emails, they're surfing the internet or whatever, or they're driving even, and they're just listening. So good quality audio sound is really, really important when it comes to any type of broadcast recording. Just an FYI for those of you looking to up your game and go pro. Start adopting that go pro attitude of Eric Worre's. A couple weeks ago, I did a conference call. By the way, I want to thank Madeline, who filled in for me last week. I think she did a great job. She was able to get a lot of good information from y'all. And one of the things that kept coming up, which I was not surprised, but a little bit caught back by, was the idea that a lot of people were using that lock-in event not as a lock-in event, as an introductory event, which of course then it doesn't fulfill its purpose, which is a lock-in event. That's why it's maybe a little bit longer than it would normally be, why there's so many more testimonials and so forth, because we tend to take a little bit more liberty with someone's time and the content based on the fact that they've already been vetted. They've already gone so far into the process of learning about us that they'd be willing to put up with us for that long. So if you found that the meeting went too long, which was probably the biggest criticism, it was only because of the people who you were trying to present the meeting to were not at the right place. Hi, Madeline. We're just talking about you and your contribution to last week's call. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll mute myself.
Okay. So
thank you, Michael.
Getting a person through the partnering process the correct way is part of what makes the process work. It would be like trying to bake a cake without a recipe. You may have the ingredients, but you don't put it together in the right order, it's not going to produce the same result. And I think it's really important that we get really clear about this thing called the partnering process if we hope to produce results that are consistent with what it promises. And I'm just gonna touch on it tonight a little bit, but I think it's important to note that if you do something out of order, such as inviting a new guest into a lock-in event, then they're not going to get the information you're hoping they're going to get from that lock-in event. It needs to be tailored a different way. So for instance, if I had a new guest at a lock-in event, I'd let them know that this specific presentation has not been designed for them. I'd tell them that. Because then they kind of feel like, oh, okay, good. I don't have a big bullseye on my head. Thank you very much. Because a lot of people feel like that when they're at an event. It's like you got this big bullseye on their head and everything that you're doing is targeted straight at them. But if I said, this is actually not for you, people who've been introduced to this or a little bit further along in the information process will appreciate this content perhaps a lot more than you do. So then when they actually do appreciate the content, surprise, surprise, they're like, whoa, well, that wasn't bad at all. That was really interesting, actually. And it makes them even more interested. So it does the job of furthering their interest. But you created the context for that presentation because it was out of step with the process. So there's nothing wrong with having people attend events that are not necessarily designed for them or a different step in the process, but just let them know that. That way they feel that it's not targeted at them. They'll listen with a different set of ears if they think it's not targeted at them. And believe it or not, if they're at a NECANN meeting of any kind, I think they're going to hear something pretty cool. And they're going to get excited about it, and it'll validate their motive for maybe learning more about NECANN. So keep that in mind when you're introducing people to NECANN and the way that you're introducing them. Before we get on to anything, is there anyone who has some questions for me before I move forward on what I wanted to talk about tonight? Any questions that came up, especially in lieu of the meeting that I had a couple of weeks ago with you with respect to an interview I did of a 7-figure earner in another company and his approach to things? I thought that might stimulate some interest and some reaction. So I'm open to that dialogue. We don't have to carry on with my agenda. If you've got some comments or some things that you would want me to maybe dig in a little bit further on, now's the time. I'm not forcing you to. I'm just asking if you've got something that you'd like me to retread. I'd be more than happy to. Well, I can tell you this much. My trip to Paris was wonderful, and I did get a chance to spend a great deal of time, personal one-on-one time with our CEO, Kurt Foley. And some of you may have seen our Facebook pictures together, especially the ones at the winery that we had a chance to go visit about 2.5 hours out of Paris in the Loire Valley. And it was a fantastic experience and a great taste testing experience. And the fellow who took us was so knowledgeable about the wine and winery. You know, I found something out. This is a little tidbit and a complete aside from what we normally talk about. But you know that in Paris and in France in general, they don't know really the type of grape that goes into a wine. They don't pay any attention to that. That's not how they measure their wines. Like, you know, we have our Cabernets and we have our Sauvignon Blancs and we have our, but there, there it's all by where it's from, where it's made. So, and these guys, this particular vineyard was so distinct that they segregated what particular plot the wine came from. The wine had its own label and its own winemaker based on the plot. They had 7 hectares of vineyards. They do about 800,000 bottles of wine a year, segregated by 20 plus plots. Imagine that. Anyway, it was fascinating. Great experience, great time. And we got a chance to share a bunch of stuff. And a lot of stuff that we talked about was in relation to some of my findings with respect to that call that I had with that gentleman and Eric Warrian, what was happening in the MLM industry at large and what was working in the MLM industry at large. And so the old school approach, which happens to fall right into my space, the stuff that we've been talking about for the last year since the intervention of these tools, is exactly what works. So I don't mind going into this to greater depth because I think it's really relevant that we get a real handle on how to tap that warm market list, how to approach the contacts in a way where the context that we're setting up is not a context of selling a product. As good as our products are, that's not what matters when it comes to expanding our business in terms of our business model. Now, I know that seems rather controversial, but if you watched that interview, and I recommend you do, a couple of weeks ago, and I've taken stock of this over the years, and in fact, I've written about it. I have a book that was published in 2005, and in it, I talk about that. I never lead with the product. I said never lead with the product. And so the question then becomes, what do you want to attract into your business? Now, everybody wants customers, but is that what you want to build your business? Will customers lead you to leaders? No, but leaders will lead you to customers every time. So you want to attract people who are going to be leaders. What was that comment? Let me just read that chat comment. His focus was asking people what they have planned for their retirement or pension. Yeah, imagine that. Had nothing to do with their product. It was about the product of the business. So if you evaluate the presentation that Ben and I recently published, it starts with a business presentation because we make the case that the number one source of stress, which is the number one contributor to health problems, is finances. So how can we legitimately be a health conscious company and talk about total health and not address the number one concern that leads to the impairment of health, and that is financial health? So that's why we bring it up. We give you a strong and legitimate argument to bring it up. And so that is going to attract people about a financial conversation. I like the comment that fellow made of that interview 2 weeks ago. He's asking people, what does it look like, their pension? Are they set up for their pension? Which gets them thinking about a future reality. So talking about not doubling or tripling their income, no, he didn't. He talked about doubling and tripling their pension. There's a big difference. Make note, that's a very big difference. If I said, how would you like to double or triple your pension? I'm not talking about doubling your income. I'm talking about your future, your ability to retire in some near future reality and having enough saved up in order to do that. And so this business can be that. It can be an opportunity for people to build a pension, and which it is for many of us. Okay, so any questions? Nothing's come up so far. Somebody raised their hand. Did you want to jump in or ask a question? Okay, I just want you to know that this platform is here for you to be able to ask questions as well of situations that you may be in that you'd like forward movement on, because everyone would benefit from that situation. I do have something I'd like to share. Some of you may have seen this. Many of you probably haven't yet. It's a compensation plan summary, but in a very different way. So let me see if I can do this. View, control. There we go. All right. Check this out. This is a different way of looking at the Nikan compensation plan. In most cases, what we have is the compensation plan shown vertical. You climb the rungs of a ladder, which if you think about the emotions associated with a vertical climb and what that sets up in terms of the mindset of the individual when they're looking at this compensation plan, that it's a climb, they're starting at the bottom and they're working their way up. And most people don't look far enough up the ladder to even imagine that they would ever get up that ladder. So there's all kinds of psychological drawbacks to the way we have been presenting the comp plan from the paradigm from which it was born, the network marketing paradigm, which actually preceding that is the corporate paradigm. You start at the bottom and you work your way up, and it's kind of like a pyramid, right? Whereas this is completely lateral. This is lateral motion. This means I'm not climbing up and I'm not climbing over. I'm simply moving from one place to the next. So it's forward motion, and it's a track for each individual. And this is made possible thanks to our new compensation plan. We couldn't have drawn it this way, and it wouldn't have made any sense to draw it this way had it not been for the change that took place that says we don't need advancements in rank in our downline in order for us to advance in rank ourselves. Now it's just a distribution of volume. And so this is a much more intelligent way of presenting the comp plan, and something that I think you'll find more and more people can see themselves achieving. So it's almost like it's just degrees of which you are moving in that plan. How far along are you on that road to progress in the plan? And how many levels have you activated of this plan? How many levels of activation of benefits have you engaged? in this plan. As you go from left to right, you see it gets deeper and deeper, and there's more numbers involved. So it's just a simple way of presenting the idea that has so much more empowerment to it. So this is now available as a PDF. Please ask whoever you need to get it, even if it means coming back to me. It's available as a PDF that you can share, and then you can share it through any number of ways, WhatsApp, and you name it. Any questions about the comp plan as it's designed this way? Anyone out there?
Mike, this is Ruth Lowe.
Yes, Ruth.
So I love that it goes across. I like it that we're moving from left to right, but I also realize putting it this way, what's occurred to me at gold, platinum, diamond, royal diamond, I used to have a hard time remembering the numbers. Okay, it's 15,000 OV, obviously. I mean, right, 15,000 for gold. And now when I look at it this way, I can see it's a third that has to be outside leg and a tenth has to be outside of primary and secondary leg. And it just dawned on me all the way across. It's so much easier that way.
It's easier to remember, yeah.
So thank you very much for showing us that.
So what she's referring to is, if you look at the number, let's say 15,000 under the gold here. I don't know if you guys are seeing my highlight, but
yes.
Okay, good. 15,000. So the next qualifier is 1/3 of that, which is 5,000, the number right below it. And then 10% of that 15,000 is the last qualifier. There's 3 qualifiers. There's the OV, there's the outside primary, and outside secondary. So 15,000, 1/3, 15,000, 10%. So if it's 30,000, 1/3 of that is 10, 10% of that is 3,000. If it's 100,000, 1/3 of that is 33, 10% of 100,000 is 10,000. If it's 300,000, 1/3 of that is 100, and 10% of 300,000 is 30,000. So it's just a simpler way to remember the numbers. Absolutely. Any other thoughts or comments about this new plan? Or this new
Mike, I think it's really neat that the levels go down from top to bottom. The 6 levels at Royal and 2 levels at Silver. That's clearer too. Just that's your downline.
Yeah. So you're digging deep into the organization. You're going further into the organization. Yeah.
It's just more graphic. It's more obvious that those are your group. It's not they're out there. They're in your organization.
Exactly. Cool. Any other comments, thoughts? I'm just there's somebody expected on this call and they're not on. There we go. Okay.
I have a question.
Sorry, go ahead.
I may be incorrect on this. I don't have it in front of me, but I think on the Entrepreneur Club, that still involves having 3 executives. Is that right?
Yes, it does. The Entrepreneurs Club? Yeah.
Okay. So that varies from this in that...
No, your rank advancement is... Entrepreneurs Club is an incentive. It's not a rank advancement.
Right. Exactly. No, I know that, but okay. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, no, I guess I was, I knew it was an incentive, not the advancement, but I guess I was thinking in my mind, this is not necessarily, it's requiring volume, not necessarily rank, yet that's requiring rank, but they're different.
Right. However, having said that, if you did have an Entrepreneurs Club, would you not in fact rank advance to Silver automatically?
Right.
In other words, it's a consequence.
Yes.
Isn't that a great thing that our plan generates a consequence? The consequence is you advance in rank. So if you actually look at what I'm holding in my hand here is the incentive program, which these booklets are available from lifeinbalancetools.com. This is the new one. And the new one has the comp plan on the inside cover published this way. So if you actually look at this plan of incentives is sort of a step-by-step plan of incentives, but consequentially lead to an advancement in rank, ultimately to the rank of platinum, and therefore you qualify for a trip to Italy next year. So it's our business plan. It's a fantastic That's why I decided it needed to be published, because it's literally our business plan. And everyone ought to be on that plan. Everyone. All of us ought to be qualifying for the trip to Italy. How many of you are working right now to meet your month-end qualifications so that you have at least those 3,000 points that they discuss in the plan in order to meet the qualifications for Italy? I know I am. And there's a plan B in the program so that you can qualify for that trip 2 A's. If it's not 3,000 in points every month, it could be, well, hit platinum first of all, and then you may have to do 50,000 in volume, but all of which is doable over the course of the entire year. So we have, I think, right now, especially the way this compensation plan looks, designed this way, I think we have perhaps the simplest compensation plan I've ever seen in the network marketing world. Quite literally. I have seen some that literally make an aerospace engineer's head spin. That's me. And I have been confused to no end with some of these comp plans. And I just think there's only so many ways to skin a cat. Why are you making me skin it 10, 15 different ways? This is a very simple comp plan to learn, to present, and use this tool from now on to actually present it. So again, if you haven't seen that tool, if you don't know where to get it, ask your upline, ask me, send me an email, whatever. I'll make sure you get a copy of that PDF to use. Okay, so I did say that. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Since you're talking about the comp plan and the business plan, and that your head does not spin with ours and does with others, since this is also a training call, can you speak to other plans that are out there, specifically a binary plan, and how this one is simpler and more straightforward and more, the benefits of this versus a traditional binary plan? Can you give some insights to people so that they can learn and perhaps go study?
Well, okay, so if you are familiar with the binary plan, which you may not be familiar with, so then I'm sort of educating you on it. That's maybe not necessary, but ours is actually trinary. So think in this terms of a stool. A stool is better, supported with 3 legs than 2. So that's one thing you should consider, that there's more stability in our plan. In a typical binary plan, you are paid based on the smallest leg. So you have 2 legs. You're encouraged to build 2 legs, but the idea is to build them equally. In no way, shape, or form has anyone ever succeeded at that, because it's simply not the way it's done. The way those plans are designed, they're designed to encourage you to recruit people under people, which creates dependency instead of independency. So that psychological behavior can cause attrition in the plan very, very quickly, meaning people doing nothing or people quitting. But if you also understand a comp plan of a binary, you're usually paid on the shortest leg. So that means no matter how long that first leg is, that could be a huge amount of volume in your downline. I'm just going to mute that line that's still open and it's a little bit loud. I can't find it, so hopefully you can mute yourself. Anyway, that very, very, very long leg doesn't get compensated on, because you only get paid down to the depth of the second leg, or the volume of the second leg. So in our comp plan, there's nothing like that. It doesn't matter what the depth of the second leg is. You get paid however many generations you're qualified to get paid. And it's extremely typical that you have 1 leg that goes from here to China. So a typical network marketing business looks like 1 very big leg, 1 not as big leg, and then another not as big leg, and then successive legs if you've sponsored a lot of people that are simply not as big, all contributing to volume, but just simply not as big. So it curves like this. I don't know if I'm drawing that right, but anyway, the point is that's normal. My business looks like that. Dave Johnson's business looks like that. No matter how many years you've been in this business, that's what your business looks like. So the compensation plan of Niken actually now marries it with what our business naturally looks like. So as your business naturally forms, you're going to naturally qualify for these advancements in rank. Whereas in many other compensation plans, there's a number of conditions that have to be met that are usually far more difficult. For instance, our previous iteration, having to have first level people qualify at rank, or downline legs qualify at rank. You have to have 3 platinum legs or 3 diamond legs or 3 gold legs. That's a lot more challenging than simply finding volume and knowing that there's always going to be one leg bigger than the next leg, bigger than the next leg. So our comp plan is now a perfect iteration of what our business naturally grows, how it naturally grows and forms. So again, it's just not typical of network marketing. They took out a lot of the things that are roadblocks, obstacles in typical network marketing compensation plans. So it's a phenomenal comp plan. Again, extremely simple. However, I'm gonna say one thing. I want you to note this. In fact, this was a conversation I had with our CEO in Paris last week. The idea that the comp plan doesn't require advancements in rank for you to advance in rank, yes, that's true. But as a strategy, and what I mean by that is if you consider the strategy for the Entrepreneurs Club, if you want to go for the Entrepreneurs Club, you need to break 3, or you need to have 3 executive legs created in that 1 month blast. So even though you don't need the 3 executive legs to rank advance to silver, you rank advance to silver as a consequence of going for the Entrepreneurs Club. Plus, you have now 3 executives who are in line to do the same. So as a strategy, what I would be doing, and I am doing, and what I encourage you to do, as a strategy, I would be breaking ranks in my downline as a strategy. The consequence is you're going to advance in rank because that's going to generate the volume. Going back to the first conversation we had tonight, if I'm looking for customers, I may not find leaders, but if I'm looking for leaders, I'll always get customers. So I'm looking for leaders and helping those leaders advance in rank. And by doing that, that generates volume and a nice distribution of volume, which naturally leads to your advancement in the compensation plan. So if I had one skill set, one thing that I wanted to focus on and develop and learn and get really good at, it would be attracting leaders, because everything comes as a result of that, not necessarily the other way around. If I find great customers, I'm going to have great customers. I may have some referrals, but that doesn't generate what I'm really looking for to maximize our compensation plan, which is the leadership bonus. They call it a leadership bonus, not a fellowship bonus or a fellowship bonus. So we're looking for leaders and to encourage the development of leaders. And so if that's the prime directive, if you will, getting good at finding and attracting, more specifically attracting, not necessarily finding, but attracting leaders is the quintessential thing to get really skilled at, really good at. And that all begins with learning how to identify them. How do you identify a leader? Now, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily a mover and shaker in their industry, but a leader has certain characteristics. Wouldn't you agree? Would you say they're entrepreneurial, or they're self-driven or self-motivated? Would you agree that they have some influence? They have a good sense of self-worth and self-image? Would you agree that they're resourceful? Whether they have the money or they can find the money, for them, money is not going to be the reason they don't do something. It'd be the reason they do something. And so our qualifications when we're looking at the $1 million list is EIRL. Are they entrepreneurial? Are they influential? Are they resourceful? And do they live nearby? And so that influences who we're going to approach and how we're going to approach them when we're looking for our leaders to join our team and build a Niken business of their own, with all the bells and whistles and all the incentives that go along with that. So the other piece of this is the approach. If you've listened to the March 27 Aligning with Success audio, put that in your library of tools. By the way, how many of you are using WhatsApp? I hope you're all using WhatsApp. It's sort of the quintessential network marketing tool, I think. It was like designed for us because we can share files, we can PowerPoints, PDFs, pictures, audio files, we can send text messages, group chats, we can segregate our teams and so forth based on our prospect list, our contact list, our downline list, our key man list. It's amazing. This is such an innovative tool for us to be able to communicate and leverage. And a lot of the documents that I share this way. I digress. Oh, yes. Okay. So the key to attracting people to the business from the perspective of the business is asking for help. To contrast, what your normal inclination might be is, hey, I've got this great product that I think can help. So if you're going about it that way, expecting to recruit a leader, I can assure you it's a very, very small probability that that's going to happen. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's just not likely to happen. So if you want to maximize your probability of finding and attracting leaders, attracting leaders, they're out there. It's putting out the right bait, if you will. And the right bait is asking for help. Why would you be asking for help? Because they have qualities and characteristics and intentions and the disposition of somebody who could influence the situation. That's why you want to ask for their help, to influence the situation. And their help can be one of two forms, directly or indirectly. Directly would be they get involved and they will lead you to a contact list of their own. Indirectly would be that they would lead you to someone, at least one other person who would be a good name to put on this contact list, complete with all the things that we're looking for, because that's what we're asking for, their help. And we're telling them what it is that we're doing and what it is that we need help with, qualifying that lead. So that's the way I've always approached it, the way the pros approach it, the way I recommend you approach looking for those leaders. Any questions? So digest that for a second as you think about the calls that we've had in the last couple of weeks, because they're all focused and based on a process for identifying and attracting leaders into our team and presenting a duplicatable path for them to do the same. What's that duplicatable path? Once we've had that first conversation with somebody, once we've identified somebody as somebody we want to attract, and we've made that initial call to ask for help, what comes next? What is that very simple process that should provide them with enough information that they would see the wisdom or the logic or the reasoning behind either A, helping you directly, or B, helping you indirectly? What is that path? Now, I'm referring to something we've talked about, the partnering process. And I know that's kind of hard to see. Maybe let me do it this way. Speaker view. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, get that hand out of the way. There we go. Partnering process. Okay. So there's the why conversation, which is the one at the bottom. So our contact list feeds into this process. The contact list is here, feeds into this process, and you can see there's arrows. So essentially, we're asking people to join us in a process of discovery, from which they should result in them either becoming a customer or joining as a consultant, or better yet, being one of our partners. Now, what is the difference between a consultant and a partner? Anyone?
A partner's building.
Okay. Can you be more specific? How would I know I've got a partner on my hands? What sort of things would be apparent?
They're asking for ABCs. They're putting people with you to take them to the next step through the business. The focus is on the business end of it because they want to build the business. The products are necessary, but they're the second part of the equation.
Okay, so their behavior is consistent with somebody who's looking to earn an income.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there something more concrete, more finite before we even get into that? Like you may find yourself getting into action with somebody who's not yet even prepared to take the action. And once you understand what I'm talking about, you'll know what I mean.
They ask you what's the next step that they should take, and you discuss the 100 name list with them.
Okay, there's one. So that's a finite thing.
Yeah.
100 name list. So if they're not pulling together a names list and they're not serious about that, because that's the beginning of the beginning, then how far are they going to get down the road before they quit or don't do much more? If they've only got 3 names and they've talked to all 3 people and all 3 people said you're out of your mind, they're out of business.
Well, those that are preparing a list, you say to them, who is the first person that you'd like to bring into the business with you and why? Give me some of their attributes. Then call them right away.
Okay, so there's a good initiation sequence. I like that, Barb.
Exactly.
You're talking about how can I get them engaged immediately so that there's something that we can build upon and we can help overcome some of those initial hurdles. There's a huge fear associated with going out and talking to people about something, number one, you're not sure about. You're not sure you made the right decision yourself. You don't even know what to talk about because this is not the context of your profession or your career necessarily. So if you're not an MLM professional, you've not done this before, where do I begin? Like we just had a whole conversation about how we don't go out running out looking for people to be customers. We're out looking for partners, and how that approach is different than the other approach. So where would I have learned that? Where would I have known that? So a person who's brand spanking new, you've got to assume knows nothing, doesn't know any of this, and more than that, is fearful of getting out there and talking to anybody. So we have to hold their hand and get that first 2 or 3 hurdles. And the easiest 2 or 3 hurdles would be the people.
So ABC?
Yeah, absolutely. Through an ABC.
The compelling vision. Somebody with a compelling vision, and they saw this as a solution with whatever came out in your conversation.
Okay, well, we're sort of, okay, that's the question
Beyond
I was
that.
asking before. So
Before.
I'm asking for how can I tell between a partner and a consultant? They both signed up.
One wants to go through the process. One wants to go through the process, and the other one says, I don't have time to do it right now, but I'll look at the products.
So, wait, you just said something. Number one, you said $1 million list or list, contract.
Yeah.
Now you just said time. Okay. So that's 2 of the 3 ingredients that's necessary to build this business.
They've committed
and
time.
money. Some time,
They're
some money.
committing the time.
What's the third ingredient?
Invest.
The money, the resources.
The resources. Okay, so what resources are necessary for them to really get this business off the ground? Be honest. I'm brand spanking new. Tell me honestly. Don't worry about shell shocking me. Tell me the truth, because if you don't tell me the truth, you're giving me a handicap. I need to know what I'm up against. I need to know what it takes to succeed. Tell me the truth. What kind of
Products to use, products to demonstrate with. You're a product of the product yourself. Business cards, investment in trips to catch the big vision.
What trips?
You have to have big events, lock-in events, being willing to make the investment to learn what you need to know and to take your new prospects there.
Okay, that might sound
executive and silver.
Pardon me?
I said executive and silver to make that much of an investment to get started.
Executive and silver?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just recap. So what I'm hearing here is when it comes to the investment of time so that if they're not serious, I mean, if they don't set the time aside, then they're not going to be able to build a business, so they're not taking it seriously. I mean, it's amazing how much time people will commit to their job that they absolutely hate, is taking them nowhere and doesn't really provide for them the future that they want. But they'll put the time in. Pardon me?
They don't have a choice.
Well, they do have a choice. They just don't think they have a choice. And then when they're presented with one, they're presented with this as an option. Why don't they make the time? If they don't make the time, why aren't they making the time? Let's save that conversation for later. So time, there has to be a commitment of time. It takes time to go and meet with people, talk with people, share this idea. They have to make that time. They have to make it regularly, or they're really treating this as a hobby, not as a business. Therefore, they're going to be compensated as a hobby would be. And then most hobbies I know cost money. They don't make money. So that's the story of their career. Or they're going to invest the time properly, be diligent about it, be wise about it, manage their time properly. Even though it may be minimal amount, it's with some consistency and high yielding effort. There's the contact list. Again, a short contact list, oh, I don't know anybody, is nonsense. Everybody knows hundreds of people on a first name basis in life by the age of 18. We know this as a fact. All we have to do is look at their Facebook page, their telephone Rolodex, whatever. They know people. They just don't know how to approach those people. That's coaching, that's training, that's coming. We give them that instruction. But if they're not prepared to put the investment of their contact list, which means they're not willing to risk maybe their reputation, or now we have a different matter that we have to address. And then the last thing, the last ingredient, time, money, and contacts. The money part is the investment. I heard a few things mentioned. Products for personal use. Yeah, you're a product of your product. How can you with conviction come across as somebody who's genuinely making a recommendation if you yourself aren't using the product, right? You're going to come across as somebody who's selling, and that's the thing that you don't want to be, so don't be that. Be a user of the products, a fan of the products, and an advocate of the products because you're such a fan. So the more products that you can get access to, the better. Hence, the number that was thrown out by Carol, Executive Silver, essentially get enough products. And by the way, as a sponsor, make a recommendation. What is enough? If somebody asks me, Mike, what products should I get? My answer is always the same, no matter how much money they have or don't have. My answer is all of them. What products should I get? All of them. Now, the better question would be, what product should I start with? And so now we can look at what should they be starting with. We can base it on a few things, but one of the things that I think is going to maximize their return on investment is the sleep system and the water product, water technology. Those are our two maximum yield products for the purposes of building the business, which means making money. And if that's an objective, then we've got to encourage that behavior. It's our biggest money-making products. And them using them and sharing them is going to offer them the maximum return on their investment and the progression through their business. On top of that, you might make some other recommendations, but those are the two things that I always put front and center stage. Then there was an investment. I think you were talking about events. The events, there are a few events during the calendar year that you want to plan for. Now, it may be, well, there's one, for instance, in October in Toronto. There's one in April in San Francisco. There's one in July in Orlando, leadership. Each one has its own reason to be, and you may not necessarily have somebody go to all three, but they should be in their calendar for a reason. They should at least be committed to one, at least, for the year. However, if they're in their calendar and you you engineer their launch strategy whereby they are, targeting some of the incentives in this incentive program, they're not going to be alone. What happens in 3 months' time when the next big event comes around and they've got 3 or 4 rock stars in their business, and those rock stars want to go to that event? Are they going to sit at home? Probably not. They may decide that that's an event we all need to go to. That'll be our first team event. So you create the calendar. That's where the commitment of time comes in. And you include in your calendar those big events, because those big events are not a cost. They're an investment with a return on investment if you build your business. So every event has a reason to be, and it's not for you to sit there in a seat all by your lonesome. It's for you to leverage so that you can build a downline and have a team of people with you. So if we look at our business properly through the lens of a business person and not a consumer, then we see that each of these things are there by design to help us leverage and multiply our business and our downlines. So help people to see through the lens of an entrepreneur, through the lens of a business person, especially when this may be their first entrepreneurial experience. They may not be accustomed to thinking and seeing like an entrepreneur. They may think and see things through the lens of a consumer. Oh, how much is this going to cost me? Why are you asking how much it's going to cost you? Ask me how much it's going to make you. See the difference? All of a sudden, it's not about how much it costs. It's about how much it can make. Let's look at it from that point of view, and then it starts to make more sense. So help people see that. It's not obvious to somebody who's not an entrepreneur. Some people need that kind of attention to detail for them to understand what it's going to take and why it's necessary and why they may need to shift the way they think. The way they think has resulted in the way they live. And if they've joined Niken for business reasons, then they're looking to improve the way they live, which means they need to improve the way they think about business. Agreed? Two thumbs?
Yes.
Okay, well, listen, we're at past our time. I'd like to keep these calls to max 45 minutes. We're at 48 minutes. So I'm going to say, hold your thoughts for that last question, because it was that last consideration, which I think was a really good one in terms of objections. And let's see if we can tackle this next week, the types of objections that come up. And so bring some of that with you to next week's call so we can help people address what invariably happens on a day-to-day basis. We meet people with some resistance and some questions and some objections. All right. Have a great week, guys. Have a great month end.
Thank you.
Thank you.